All right, it's time for us to get started this morning. It's good to see everybody. We're going to finish up our time looking at pages 48, 49, and 50 in the book for our Proverbs class. If anybody doesn't have that material, I've got a few copies of this printed, pages 48, 49, and 50. I can give you a copy of this. If you'll pass that down, Miss Tanya. All right. Anybody else need the material? Yeah. There you go. There you go. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Just as a reminder of the backstory of this particular material, we're studying through or finishing up a study on the book of Proverbs that we've done for a number of weeks this year. And so this is the end of the material that I put together. Now, those of you who have never seen this particular section of the material before may think, my, that's such a abrasive title for a section of material, 40 Reasons People Don't Like You. But particularly, this is a set of material, a list of things that the president at Freed-Hardeman, Brother David Shannon, put together some years ago. I got this list from him, and it's basically just an outline of some of the characteristics that can hurt our friendships and family relationships. And this is kind of the conclusion of what we're studying here in the book of Proverbs. Now, we've looked all the way down through number 13. We're kind of skipping a few of them. So we're going to start with number 14 and then go on to the next page. So let's look down at number 14, and we're going to be in Proverbs 25 and verse 20. Proverbs 25 and verse 20. Just a reminder of some of the qualities we've looked at that are not good qualities, qualities we don't need to have as people and especially as Christians, are the following. We studied from Proverbs 18 and verse 1, being a loner. We talked about how being someone who only looks after your own interest is not only against what the Bible says in Philippians 2, but it is also a negative quality where you don't have the responsibility of the relationships that God commands us in the church. Of course, we know we have the burden of responsibility to encourage one another, to take care of one another, to make sure we're teaching one another. And so as a Christian, you can't be a loner. You have to be a part of the body of Christ. You have to be intricately woven within the body of Christ and support the other members of the church where you're located. That's a requirement, not a suggestion from the Lord. And so Proverbs 18 and verse 1 says, if you always just are concerned about yourself, you're a loner and you're pushing against all wise judgment, Proverbs 18 and verse 1. Okay, we talked about a few others, being a bad listener from Proverbs 18:13, people who are quick to give their opinion, Proverbs 12:23, people who are argumentative, Matthew 5 and verse 9, people who are unwilling to forgive, Proverbs 20 and verse 3, people who cut others down and they're too blunt, Proverbs 12:18 and Proverbs 29:11, people who cannot control their anger, Proverbs 19:19, Proverbs 14 and verse 4, we talked about being inflexible and controlling, unwilling to at least bend to the scruples and the opinions of other people for the greater glory of the church. And then finally, we ended in Proverbs 11 and verse 13, not being able to keep a secret. All of those qualities, while in and of themselves, we could find a couple of instances where those things are necessary. We talked specifically about the secret aspect from number 13, that there are times where we do have to break confidence for the safety of someone's life, but the vast majority of the time, breaking confidence is not a good quality. 99.9% of the time, you should always keep the confidence of those who share things with you, especially if they share them with you specifically in confidence. But most of these qualities, if not all of them, are things we should avoid altogether. Let's start with number 14, Proverbs 25 and verse 20. Here's what the proverb says, Proverbs 25, verse 20. Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day and like vinegar on soda. Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day and like vinegar on soda. Someone tell me, what do you think this proverb is talking about? What kind of person is this describing? I know you already have number 14 in front of you, so you might already see it. But what are these things like? Vinegar on soda, taking away someone's coat when it's cold, Singing a song to a heavy heart. Like rubbing salt in a wound. Okay? What happens? Some of you do this, okay? Some of you do this at home. This is the comparison that comes to mind. If you've got a sink that's not draining properly, okay, and you don't want to use that Drano stuff that'll probably, kill your liver in a couple of years, you want to maybe try to clean out your drain pretty quickly, but maybe a little more healthily. You could put a little baking soda down in the drain, and what do you pour over that? Vinegar. And what's it do? Man, anybody ever do a volcano experiment when you were a kid? Okay, it causes some friction, right? There's a reaction. Okay. What about taking away somebody's coat on a cold day? It's cold this morning. What if somebody said, you can't wear your coat between the parking lot and the building this morning? You're not allowed to. Would you be very happy with that person? Some of you are crazy and you might be like, yeah, I love the cold weather. It feels good to me. Okay? Y'all are wild and a little insane. If somebody took your coat away, okay, you wouldn't be too happy with them, would you? Okay? This type of person, described in Proverbs 25 and verse 20, as we have on number 14, is someone who is unsympathetic. Unsympathetic. What is someone who is sympathetic? What is that person like? What is sympathy? Care. Okay. What else? How would you describe someone who is a sympathetic person?
They want to try to help you do something to make you feel better.
They care about your feelings. They care about how you currently feel at the moment. So they're going to do something to try to make you feel better. Okay? When we're talking about being sympathetic people, I don't know if it's based on how people are raised, if it's the environment that they live in, or if it's just their own intricate, God-given personality. I don't know. But it seems like in the world there are some people who are very sympathetic to others. They have a tender heart towards the things that other people deal with. Okay? And then there are those in the world who have no sympathy for anyone. No sympathy for anyone, no matter what their situation is. Most of the time, the people who lack sympathy for someone in a certain situation are people who have never gone through that before, and they're just hard anyways, and you can't soften them up, and they're just going to say, you know what, they're just being wimps about this. Just tell them to get over it. Just tell them to suck it up. Just get over it. Just move past it. They're being so tender about this. But is that the way that Christians ought to treat each other? Ought we to be so hard to each other? In fact, the New Testament over and over and over again, Philippians 2 is a great one to return to, where it says that you and I should have this care for one another, have this mind towards one another, like Christ had to us. I mean, couldn't you imagine that if anybody in the world could have looked down on humanity and said, y'all are just being ridiculous. Why do y'all keep giving in to sin? Why do y'all keep doing this? I just can't believe that y'all, I didn't do it, so how come y'all are doing it? Y'all should just toughen up. Just stop giving in to sin. If anybody could say that to us, it would be Jesus. But that's not what He said to us. In fact, He went to the ultimate extreme to ensure that we had a way out of the punishment that was due us for our sins. Jesus is what we would call the great sympathizer. He sympathizes with us, not only in dying for our sins when He committed none, but also in looking at us in our struggles and sins and being sympathetic towards us when we're ready to repent and being the one who is the mediator between us and God. He understands the temptations we go through. So as Christians, we ought to be sympathetic people. How can we be more sympathetic in the church? How can we be more sympathetic? Okay, helping each other.
Be knowledgeable of what each other needs.
You can't have sympathy for someone if you don't even know what's going on, do you? Right? Being more involved and more invested, more knowledge of what people are going through.
You have to care.
There has to be care, right?
Care, it's like 1 Corinthians 13, if you don't have love.
Doesn't matter what you're capable of doing, right? It doesn't mean anything if you don't have love. Okay? Any other ways we could be more sympathetic? It's a good practice for us to put ourselves in the shoes of other people and try to understand what it is they're going through instead of just looking at everything from our own perspective. think sometimes when we lack sympathy because we picture how we would react based on our current situation to what they're going through, okay? But most of us have not walked in the shoes of anybody else. We've not lived the life anybody else has lived. There is a measure of mercy and care and sympathy that we should have for others. One great passage for that, Paul writes in the book of Romans, that you and I should rejoice when others rejoice, and we should weep when others weep, right? That's sympathy. When others are going through difficulty, we stand beside them and weep with them. When people are going through good times, we stand beside them and rejoice with them, okay? The opposite of that would be when people are weeping, we stand beside them and say, hey, suck it up, get over it. Or when people are happy, we say, what you got to be happy about? There's so much bad in the world. We do the opposite, okay? You and I should try at our best to be sympathetic towards others, to not take away the garment on the cold weather, to not be like vinegar to soda, to not be like one who sings songs to a heavy heart. Okay? Proverbs 25:20. Any further comments on this particular quality?
I think we need to be aware, or try to be aware of what's going on around us.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are, you might just, oh, they need some help.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could use some food. Just little things like that, Just,
Yes, ma'am. It becomes very easy to be isolated in our own bubble, right? Focus. I'm particularly bad about this. If I've got my mind on something and I'm walking to do something, or I've got my mind set on something, I can get in my own bubble and just everything around me can just dissolve, right? Some of you may know what that's like. But we have to push beyond that and say, I need to be aware of what other people are going through, what other people are dealing with, and be open to their needs to try to help them as best I can. Okay? Any further comments?
I'm looking at the word like here. That's a simile,
Mm-hmm.
a figure of speech that we generally do. He's like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's very abrasive. He's a little bullish,
Mm-hmm.
and he's an irritant in his company.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Those are some really great similes for what we're talking about here, right? He's very bullyish, you said. He's very irritating. He's an irritant in his company. Those are some fantastic descriptions here of this person in Proverbs 25:20. Okay? Any further comments? All right, let's move on to number 17 and 18. We're going to put these together. They're both out of Proverbs 18. So this is number 17 and 18 on the list. Both come from Proverbs 18. One of them, Proverbs 18, verse 19. The second one, Proverbs 18, 23. And we're going to kind of marry these together because they can be comparable. Are you an offensive person or are you a rude person? Are you offensive and are you rude? Here's what Proverbs 18 and verse 19 says. This is under the quality of being an offensive person. Proverbs 18:19. A brother offended is more unyielding than a strong city, and quarreling is like the bars of a castle. All of us know that, the old, most of you have probably read the old Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. One of the chapters in there that he talks about is that you can attract more with honey than you can with vinegar, right? There's more attraction to a kindness than there is to people who are, obstinate, hard-headed, rude. It's their way or the highway. You and I know that when we offend somebody, now, offense is not always our fault, okay? Some people are easily offended by everything. They are offended that you're alive, okay? There are some people like that out in the world, and you don't have to tiptoe around every person. But there are, and I think all of us know the fine line between this, right? We know when somebody is easily offended and you just say something and they're offended, even if it's not something that should be offensive, okay? There is a difference between someone who is always offended and then someone who very clearly tries to offend others. And we've all met people like that. Like that, there's no filter in the things that they say. There's no care or compassion for the heart and the mind of others. And that's what Proverbs 18:19 is emphasizing, is that when you and I live our life that way as an offensive person, we make no inroads into someone's mind and heart. Okay? You can make no inroads, for instance, when you're sitting down and talking to someone about the Bible, if your intention is to win an argument and to make them look foolish. You're going to make no inroads. In fact, you're probably going to shut the door and deadbolt it if you do that, okay? You and I know that trying to be offensive and trying to be an offensive person and to offend people, it in no way helps our relationships. Now, again, that's with the caveat that some people are easily offendable. And, you can't really do anything about that because they're going to be offended no matter what you say. But we all know that there is that fine line of people who are easily offended and then the person who tries to offend everybody. And we've all met someone like that. We may have been that person before. But what the emphasis of this proverb is if you try to be offensive, if you're an offensive person and you have no care or compassion for the things that you say, you don't think through those things, or you even think through them and say, I'm going to say the worst possible thing to this person, you should know that you're not going to get into anybody's life. You're not going to make any deep relationships with people to the effect that you could ultimately teach them the gospel. And we know that. You've seen that happen. You've seen people get offended. The worst place in the world you see that is online. People will try to be as offensive as possible behind a keyboard. I don't know why that is. The things that people will say to someone through a screen, nowhere in the same universe reflect what they would say to someone's face. But people get, I guess, super courageous when they're behind the keyboard, and they'll say things and make comments about things that they would never make previously, and many people do that to the objection of trying to offend someone. Like, I'm just going to raise a stink because I like a stink. And you and I should not be that way, because we know we cannot win someone by trying to offend them, okay? By trying to make them feel foolish or trying to make them feel idiotic. We do not need to have this quality about us. Again, I will state one more time so that there's no misconception here. This does not mean that you have to tiptoe around every person, even the most easily offendable person. Okay? There are some people that are going to get upset no matter what you say. So you have to have the wisdom to understand the difference. Let's look at the next one, Proverbs 18:23. Are you a rude person? Are you a rude person? The poor uses entreaties, but the rich answers roughly. You ever had somebody that always answered you roughly? Like they don't have a kind bone in their body, right? You and I know that there are some people we can be rough with in our life and some people that we shouldn't be rough with, right? And when I say rough, I mean very direct and very straightforward. Not everybody in your life needs the directness that your immediate family gets. Not everybody in your life needs the directness that your closest friends get, okay? Some people treat everybody that way. I'll give you an example that will help you understand what I'm saying. There are things that people can say to your wife that would absolutely lead to the worst scenario. But if you said it, it's because she's your wife. But a stranger couldn't say it. There's no way a stranger could say it. There are things that I use this example a lot because it was kind of the first experience I had as a preacher. There was an older lady that attended at Lineville, and she was a very hard-headed woman. And everybody said she was, she had a big personality. She was type A. She would speak her mind all the time. Everybody said, she's going to cause you problems, okay? And I learned early, because of my dad's advice, that the people that other people say cause you problems, you make them your friend immediately. That's what you have to do. And then they'll always be on your side, and you won't have problems with them. This lady was if somebody said something to her, she could hold a grudge. But Morgan and I developed a very close relationship with this lady and her husband. And one day, I pulled up to the building, and she always got there like an hour before services started. And it was cold, and it was like drizzling rain outside, and she was out there at the front of the parking lot. It was a Wednesday night, and in Lineville, the trash was picked up on Wednesday afternoon. It was a Wednesday night, and she was out there, and she was getting the trash can and trying to take it to the back of the building. And so I pulled up. She was in like her late 80s at this time, but she was super hard-headed, and she would have done it if nobody would have seen her and said anything. She'd have been done and been proud of it. And I rolled down the window, and I said, Miss So-and-so, get back in the building. I'll take care of that trash can. You don't need to be out here dragging this trash can around in the rain, okay? Now, I had known her really for 3 years, and we had a very close relationship, and she just smiled at me and put the trash can down and walked inside. Now, if I would have first got there and said that to her, she'd have said, well, you're the worst preacher ever, and I'm going to get you fired, and I can't stand you, you young preacher. But we had a good relationship with each other. And I could say things to her at that point that I wouldn't have said before. There are things that you and I can speak and say to one another if we're in a very close relationship that we can't say to other. Some of you can say things to me that a stranger couldn't say to me. And I would take you at a much deeper level than a stranger. You and I can't just answer roughly to every person. We can't be a perpetually rude person, okay? We can't have a rough answer for every single individual. We need to be kind and compassionate in the way we speak to each other. So are you an offensive person? Are you a rude person? Again, both of these center around the way that we speak. Any comments about these two, number 17 and 18?
I think this can, when I read Proverbs 18:19, I just get and help just not think about stubbornness of people,
Mm-hmm.
and that on either side, if you read it as you're being the offensive person or you're being the offended person, stubbornness on either side will not help or benefit anything.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people get set in their ways in a way, and I think that's where a lot of stubbornness, like people saying stubbornness came from. So I think as Christians we're not supposed to be stubborn, and I think this is one thing that we can look at and say, on either side of this coin, we have to be able to accept or look at least and acknowledge why they're offended or why am I being offended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being open and willing to listen is a great quality every Christian should have. Being willing to listen. All right, any other comments? All right, the next one is number 20, Proverbs 27 and verse 14. Number 20, Proverbs 27 and verse 14. And this particular, I guess this number, when I first heard Brother Shannon go through this material, this is the thing I remember most about the material he shared, because he shared a story about his father in this, and I'll share it with you as well. This question in number 20, are you an insensitive person? Insensitive person. It says in Proverbs 27 and verse 14, whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as cursing. Whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as cursing. Brother Shannon, when he shared this material, said that when he was younger, I think he grew up on a dairy farm, if I remember that correctly. Nonetheless, they grew up on a farm where they had to get up early. And he said in sharing this material, he said that his dad would always wake up early and, very loudly, I think he said he would start singing, or, he would wake the kids up with a really loud voice, essentially. And he said one day, maybe he was sitting in Bible class or he was just reading through the Proverbs, and he ran across this verse and he thought, I've got him. I've got my dad. And so he said he wrote this proverb down on a sticky note and left it on the counter. And the next morning, his dad saw it. And he said for the rest of his life growing up in the house, his dad never was loud in the morning ever again, because he took this proverb serious. Okay? Really, what this proverb has to do with is us not showing a sensitivity to other people. Now, a lot of times we talk about this and say, well, we shouldn't be sensitive to other people. But there are instances where we need to be careful and sensitive with other people, and I think we could probably name a few of them. But this proverb particularly talks about rising up in the morning with a loud voice. That when someone's trying to rest, that can be counted as cursing. Proverbs 27 and verse 14. The principle of it is, it's someone who's not considering others in their own actions. Okay? My dad used to wake us up. When I was in high school, we moved to a different house, and I begged and begged and begged my parents for us to have a 2-story home, and they decided that they would buy a 2-story home. But it was a terrible idea, because instead of coming to my room, my dad would stand at the bottom of the stairs, and he would knock on the wall till I woke up. He wouldn't come upstairs. He would just knock on the wall. It was an awful way to wake up, Not that I was easy to wake up. I've always been a difficult person to wake up. But I thought of him when I thought of this particular proverb. In reality, what this is it's a proverb that speaks of us being caring towards other people, being caring, thinking about other people's situation before we act. And of course, this goes hand in hand with some of the other ones we've looked at. Any comments about this proverb? All of you early morning folks, just remember Proverbs 27:14. Next time you want to get up and be loud and everybody in the house is trying to sleep, okay? Proverbs 27. Try to do it quietly. Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's right. That's right.
Oh, that would be Kylie Ford. Every one of his texts is
Yeah.
at 6:30 or 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Kylie's not in here, so y'all can, y'all, I guess you could say that. All right. All right, let's move on to number 24. Proverbs 14:8. Proverbs 14:8. Are you a person that admits when you're wrong? Are you a person who admits when you're wrong? Anybody in here like to be wrong? They found, yeah, you never been wrong but one time, then you found out you was right, okay? I haven't met any person in my life that just enjoys being wrong. I don't think anybody really enjoys being wrong. But there are times when we are wrong, right? Every one of us has done wrong or been wrong at some point. And the quality of being able to admit when you've done wrong or you are wrong is a wise quality. Here's what Proverbs 14 verse 8 says: "The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way." The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way. I think it's the New King James that says to understand his way. But the folly of fools is deceit. A wise person, a prudent person, understands the way they're going. And by connection, if they're going the wrong way, they'll realize they're going the wrong way and make a correction. Okay? They understand their way. The other side of that is a fool who continues in their folly. They just continue on. No stopping, no changing. A fool will continue being a fool no matter what. The folly of fools is deceit, okay? Or is deceiving, Proverbs 14 and verse 8. You and I must be people who are willing and able and humble enough to admit when we've been wrong or when we've done wrong. That is a wise quality. And we all know someone who refuses to admit when they've done wrong. That is a hard person to be a friend to. That's a hard person to be in a relationship with. Every one of us must try to admit when we're wrong. A side note to that is admitting when we are wrong doesn't mean that I say, I know I was wrong, but, okay, you did this. That's shifting the blame. When we admit we're wrong, and we leave it at that. Any comments about this one?
Sir,
Yes, sir.
it's said about some of us men that when we're lost, we never stop and ask for directions.
Has somebody said that about us?
It's usually when a person is traveling,
Uh-huh.
that they get lost, that they never stop and ask for directions.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's attributed to men.
Uh-huh. You know, I'm really bad about blaming the GPS on getting me lost, okay? I have this bad problem that if I start talking, I don't pay attention to the GPS. Mr. Bud, he'll admit that openly back there. If I get to talking, I won't pay attention to the GPS. And now I say, wow, man, this thing's leading me the wrong direction. It's having me turn around. It's because I didn't watch the turn, right? So, yeah, there are some times where we're unwilling to admit that we've done wrong, right? That we've messed up. We've missed the turn, or we didn't know actually where we were going in the first place. We just thought we could get there. Okay? Any other comments about that?
Nobody would ever think about this with me, but don't admit that you're wrong about something to make peace when you know you're not wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. As a concession to maybe keep peace,
Yeah.
right? To admit you're wrong just to keep peace. That's a valuable point, right? All right, anything else?
I think I have a hard time, not so much, admitting when I'm wrong. I'm all for learning when I've messed up. But I have a harder time when I know someone else is wrong and they won't listen to you
Oh,
for
yeah.
whatever reason. And then it goes the way you said it was going to go. And
Yeah.
then you have to sit there and be like, don't say it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say it. Be humble, keep it to yourself.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you've told them time and time again or explained something time and time again. And I
Mhm.
think it's harder for me to sit there and be like, we explained this,
Mhm.
and here we are.
Yep, yeah. It's hard for people to not say, I told you so, right? I told you so. And maybe sometimes you're dealing with those people out there that are like me, that even though you tell them how to do something, they've got to figure it out the hard way anyways. It takes humility on everybody's part, doesn't it?
Yeah.
100%. All right, so we need to be people who admit when we're wrong. Let's go to Proverbs 15 and verse 15. Number 25. Number 25. Proverbs 15 and verse 15. Are we pessimistic people? Are we pessimistic people? How would you describe a pessimist? What is a pessimist? Okay, a pessimist could always be a complainer, right? Everything's always wrong no matter how good things are. How else would you describe a pessimist?
They're always negative.
Negative, all the time,
All the time.
right? No matter what could be positive, they always find the bad in it, right? Always complaining. What else? What else is a pessimist?
Saying the bridge is out before you ever get there and you don't have no clue.
Yeah, right. They have no clue. In other words, there's no hope for the future, right? It's always going to be bad. Not only is the current situation bad, but it's always going to be bad, right? Bad is always going to follow us. Evil is always going to follow us. Here's what Proverbs 15 verse 15 say. All the days of the afflicted are evil, but he who is merry, is of a merry heart, has a continual feast. The cheerful of heart has a continual feast. Now, you and I know that there is a fine line between being a realist, a pessimist, an optimist. We need to have a little bit of all of that, right? So we need to have some realistic expectations of what's currently going on. We also need to be very optimistic as Christians of what could be because God is good. On the also other side of it, we need to have some pessimism in us, knowing that there is trouble in the world, and we know that trouble will come. So we need to have a good mixture of all of this. But we do know that the Bible teaches us consistently, especially the book of Proverbs, that having a merry heart, having a joyful heart, can outweigh some of the difficult times that we have. When I have a heart that has my mind set on heaven, a heart that has my mind set on good, when I think about what is good all the time, and I try to make the best out of every situation, even though it may be difficult, there in this proverb says, it will be a continual feast, right? No matter what problems come our way, we can still look at the blessings we have, right? There's always, as they have said, there's always a silver lining, right? There's always something good that can be found in bad. But the flip side of that is that all the days of the afflicted are evil, right? And that's the person we're describing. Someone that no matter if it is a feast, it's like, well, yeah, this is a feast, but the chicken's dry, so this isn't really a good feast, okay? Or, I would have had this instead of that, and this dessert is cold. I think it should be warm, They put ice cream on this, and I don't think you should eat ice cream on this. There are people who, no matter what good comes in life, they will always find the problem. And we all know that it can be very challenging to be in a relationship or a friendship or be a part of the church with someone who always, no matter what, finds what's wrong in the situation instead of looking at what could be good. Now, again, I don't think you and I should be blind to reality. We need to be willing to admit what's going on truly and not just pretend like everything's great when nothing is great. But we can find the good in the midst of the bad and not be a pessimistic person. That's Proverbs 15 and verse 15. Any comments on this?
I wish you a lady you could ask her, how you doing this for us? List this long. Went on for a while. One morning I says, how you doing this for us? I don't want to hear you bad. I want something good. She did tell me something good from it. She never told me the bad stuff again.
Yeah. Right? So, and it all comes down to what you focus on, right? Every day you have good and bad things that take place. Everybody does. You can have good things in the morning, bad things in the afternoon, a mixture, okay? It all comes down to what you put your attention on, what you focus on. I saw a hand back in this corner and then back up here. Did I see one over here? No? All right, Bailey.
I think this is a verse we can look at where we're taught many times when we have trials and tribulations that come along to count them as blessings. So knowing the negative is coming, thinking of positive ways that as Christians we know that when we're tried and tested, that we must be doing something right because that's what we're taught. So that's the way I look at it positively, is that when those things come along, they are negative, but I'm positive about it because I know it's happening for a reason.
Yeah, that's right. All right, any other comments?
That fine line between being realistic and pessimistic. I was constantly accused of always being negative at my previous job because I wasn't intentionally trying, but I'd be pointing out gaping holes in a plan, that no one had thought of, but it was always, oh, well, you're being negative. I'm like, but I'm also giving you a solution to that. constantly be accused of that,
Mhm.
despite that never being my intent.
Mhm.
You know, and I was like, I'm you know, and that, and it's hard, I mean, as a person, but also to like, I think you also have to give people some grace as well
Mhm.
in that aspect, and realize that some people, they're not trying to be a problem, it's just that they're seeing things that you aren't, and you have to accept that opinion as much as somebody else's.
Yeah, yeah. And that's how some people think. That's how their brain works. They're problem solvers, right?
The dichotomy of it is, you're never gonna get more out of people than you expect out.
Mm-hmm.
That's true of raising kids, or if you're a leader in a business or whatever. Remember that people are generally not gonna rise over what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
But the dichotomy of that is, if you expect the worst, you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a great point. All right, any other comments? All right, let's try to knock out one or two more. Let's go down to number 27. Proverbs 25:27 is the passage for this one. Are you a self-centered person? Are you a self-centered person? Proverbs 25:27. Is it always all about you? In Proverbs 25:27, it says, it is not good to eat much honey. Anybody in here like honey? My family loves honey, okay? We can go through honey, I mean, like electricity. I mean, it's always moving at our house, okay? But he says it's not good to eat much honey. Why? So to seek one's own glory is not glory. It is not good for you to be the person that always everything is centered on you and you take everything and there's nothing left for anybody else, okay? I think the principle in this proverb is that the person eating the honey ate all the honey. They didn't leave any honey for anybody else, okay? Some of you may be family, people that take leftovers home from restaurants. I don't know how many of you do that. You might microwave them up later, okay? Nobody likes the person in the family that eats all the leftovers before anybody else could get any, okay? Or maybe you're the person that empties a box, Anybody have a person in their family that empties the box but leaves the empty box in the refrigerator or the pantry? Okay? And then somebody comes to the pantry and they see the box, they're like, oh, we got some of that left. They pick up the box and it's empty. Okay? That is seeking our own. He makes the principle here in verse 27, to seek one's own glory is not glory, right? Or it is not glorious to seek one's own glory, right? To be all about us, all about me, myself, and I. I'm number one and everybody else can just go on. You and I need to not be self-centered people, but considerate people, to think of others, okay? And that takes effort and practice and compassion. We have to set our mind to think about others regularly. Any comments on this proverb?
I just got a joke.
Okay, tell us.
And it's on Gerald, so.
Okay, even better.
Thanksgiving, I was sick, so I wasn't able to eat a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Susan brought her carrot cake, and I asked her, I said, can I have 2 pieces? One for me and one for Gerald, because I couldn't eat mine right then.
Mm-hmm.
She said, sure. I said, well, can I get 3? Because I know Gerald's gonna eat his and mine. So I want 3 pieces, so I'll have one left. Gerald ate all 3 pieces. Because he said you were sick and you couldn't eat yours.
Oh, man, Mr. Gerald. It was good as...
I couldn't let it go.
You couldn't let that carrot cake go bad, could you? Oh, man. All right. Any other comments?
We used to travel with a group of about 5 couples, and in a restaurant, nothing was left on the table. One guy got it.
One guy got it.
He got everything.
Everything. Oh, man. All right, let's see. Let's do one more. We got time for about one more. And let's go down to number 38. Number 38. This will be the last one, and we'll finish this material. And this is Proverbs 30 and verse 17. Number 38. Do you have a problem with authority? Proverbs 30 and verse 17. Here's what Proverbs 30 and verse 17 says. The eye that mocks a father and scorns to obey a mother will be picked out by the ravens of the valley and eaten by the vultures. We've looked at this proverb before in our study. It's kind of a grotesque picture. However, what this proverb is teaching us is that it is not a good thing to buck or to push against authority. And we all know that. It's not useful. It's not good for any person. Authority is necessary in this world. Even from the beginning of time when God created Adam and Eve, God was the ultimate authority. Adam and Eve had children. God placed Adam and Eve as the authority over Cain and Abel and the rest of their children. Fast forward in the Bible, you get Abraham. Abraham set it as an authority. You get Isaac. You go on through David and Solomon. Even get into the New Testament with the prophets being quoted by the apostles and the apostles being given authority by Jesus. Authority has always existed, even in the Bible, the New Testament. It speaks of us respecting the authority of our government. I understand that you and I know that authority is extremely important, but we must respect positions of authority as well as not only in the intimate set, as far as the family, the community, the church, but also nationally and worldwide. We have to have a respect for authority. And that's exactly what Proverbs 30 and verse 17 says. Now, of course, we know there is the exception to the respect of authority given in the book of Acts, where Peter says, should we obey man rather than God? We know that the ultimate authority is God, and He's the one that we submit to. And if man creates rules that bucks against the system of God and says you don't do what God says, we obey God rather than man. But in a general sense, the Bible teaches us that we must be respectful and caring of authority. That goes for the family, for parents. That goes for the church when it comes to elders. That goes for the community when it goes to our public safety officials. It is all throughout our life. And as Christians, you and I should be very careful to look at those who are in authority and say, you know what, I'll pray for them, and I will do what they say as long as it agrees with God. That's the ultimate authority. And of course, that passage is in Romans 13, where he says that we're to obey the authorities in the land. And of course, in 1 Timothy 2, he says we should pray for all who are in authority. For men and all who are in authority, he says. For kings, he even mentions. And so you and I need to be careful to be respectful to authority. It is, of course, true that our children learn respect of authority from the way parents respect authority. And so we could start today and make sure we do that, and I believe it would have an effect generation upon generation. Any comments about that?
I work for a company that sent a lot of their employees to courses outside called Positive Power and Influence. Just these biblical principles, how to speak to a plant manager. That's how do you get what you want from a plant manager or a regular manager? And it works. The Apostle Paul, they spoke to the high priest. Peter spoke to the high priest. And they spoke in a way that did not bluster or determine or deter the mission, but they spoke with as in a lower stance that didn't offend, get the message across.
That's right. They respected the position and stood firm on the truth. And that's an important principle I think we all should adapt, right? We respect the position and we stand with the truth, stand firm with it. All right, any comments further? Okay, I apologize. I've gone just a minute or two over my time. Thank you for your attention and comments. You're dismissed.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone this morning, especially if you're visiting with us today. We are certainly glad you are here. And if you can, stick around a few minutes after services and let us get to meet you a little better. Thank you for being here with us here at Bowden this morning. Following our announcements this morning, our opening prayer will be led by Brother Brian Sullivan. At the appropriate time, Brother Luke Sullivan will dismiss us in prayer this morning. Again, it's good to see everyone out today, and glad that you are here. I'd like to ask you to remember in our thoughts and prayers, some of our members that have been sick for quite some time. Especially please remember Miss Patsy Dowdy. Remember Josh mentioned Wednesday night that she loves to get a card or a text or a phone call. Please do that if you have the opportunity to send her a message. Continue to remember Miss Johnny Harrell. She's finishing up treatments for her cancer. Please remember her as she continues to deal with that. Also, it was mentioned about Miss Diane Chandler. She is getting some better from her stroke that she had recently, but please remember her. Eric's sister-in-law, Debbie Ballard, will be having surgery following the new year on January the 7th. Please remember her. It'll be for a heart valve replacement, so remember Miss Debbie and her family. It's good to see Mr. Maddox with us today. After his little spiel, good to have him back after his surgery. Glad he's back with us today. Good to see him. And also got a message this morning that Ken and Kathy. Kathy has COVID and Ken might have it. They were still waiting to test him, but please remember Ken and Kathy Lover this morning. Just a couple of reminders to remind you of. First of all, if you're part of the youth group, please stick around just a few minutes this morning to meet with Joel. Down front, Joel. Okay. Meet with Joel down front this morning, a couple minutes, the parents of the youth group, please. Also, remember that the EYC group will be leaving out right after Christmas, headed up to Huntsville for EYC. Please keep them in our thoughts and prayers as they travel up to that event. January 12th, the elders will meet with the men at 5 o'clock, and January the 19th, they will meet with the women at 5 o'clock. So please